Everybody, welcome to the Wednesday, January 16th, 2019 Finance Administration Committee meeting, Narberth Borough Council. It's nice to have Michelle Pananopoulos and I are still in the committee, and Rob is a new member, so welcome, Rob. It's nice to have you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So we have a little bit of a lengthy agenda, and now that we have council immediately after this meeting, we have a major reason to stay on schedule, so let's get to it. Item number 1 is a borough manager update. Sean, could you help us with that, please?
Sure. Quickly, I'll just set the expectations for the way agendas are going to look for the year, and that there'll usually be 3 parts. I think there probably should be a 4th part, public comment, at some point in the meeting. But the first part of the meeting is going to be an update from the department head, or in finance and administration, that would be the borough manager, and the infrastructure committee, that would be the director of public works, and public safety, that would be the police chief and the fire chief, would speak to operational matters in their departments, anything council and the public should be aware of that had to do with administration. So I'm going to talk a little bit about year-end financials and some projects that are going on in the borough. The second part of every committee agenda is going to have discussion items. These are things that the staff and council are working on that may or may not require action from council at some point in the future, but they're things that are active and bubbling, and you can have the expectation of us applying hours and effort to get the project to fruition. And those projects are going to be surfaced from a list of projects that a project list that kind of remains dormant as a checklist of things that we are intending to do over the next foreseeable 12-18 month horizon. And then action items for the Borough Council meeting, which is to start in an hour, are things that would be introduced by the chair, motioned and seconded, discussed, and voted on. So those are the things you can expect to see tonight if there's going to end up. And I invite any questions on those matters.
And that structure is going to be applied uniformly throughout all the committees now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Seems to have started off pretty well, so we're going to keep working on it and keep working with the chairpersons on the project lists for public safety, infrastructure, and finance and administration to make sure we've got all the things on there that we intend to accomplish. So I'll go into my update, details of my update at this point. And the substance of what I'm about to say is essentially the borough manager's report that is in the meeting package. And I want to talk a little bit about the end of year financials. So in the business meeting packet for January, you'll find all the budget versus actual and cash fund balances for the borough for the year end. The general fund is reporting an adjusted net income of something $121,497, roughly 3% of overall general fund expenditures. I say adjusted because there were several income and expense items not included on our budget versus actual report that had to do with interfund transfers. We've got that all fixed, so the 2019 reporting will be the reporting. I won't have to adjust it like I just said. But the general fund made some money in 18. We ended $121,000 in the black. The solid waste fund similarly had a net income of positive $63,419. Sewer fund net income of about $55,786, and those funds go into capital investment accounts, solid waste fund account. When we look at that, we can also draw down on that fund account at some point in the future if we want to lower the operational tax rates. It's another option you have with those funds in reserve. So the year-end reconciled cash balances, and that's taking all of the actual transactions that transacted. In other words, checks that were cashed for the 3 funds, general sewer and general solid waste and sewer, were $396,000, $204,000, and $239,000 respectively. The sewer and solid waste funds cash reserves are in a good position to deal with any unforeseen costs that come from damage, repair, any new regulations that the borough would have to comply with. The general fund, however, remains underfunded, and that's our biggest concern from a financial perspective. As a matter of fact, we just ran a $95,000 payroll, and our general fund cash balance, book balance, that's all of the bills that we are about to pay, including checks that are maybe a few days and weeks out, we have $210,000. Tax bills go out February 1st, and we start seeing revenue by the middle of February. We get the bulk of the revenue in the first 2 weeks of March. So yes, I'm checking book balances every day now. We're not going to shut down local government. We're going to keep it running. So we're spending I'm spending a lot of effort managing cash flow to make sure that no temporary borrowing between any of the borough funds has to occur. But if it does, I'll advise council on that. On an as-needed basis, but my plan is to not have to do that. Long term, we want to grow our general fund year-end balances to an industry standard of about 16% at minimum of net value on an accrual basis of counting at year-end. So the target for 19 is going to be $683,000. That'll include cash in the bank and any accrued accrued liabilities and any accrued payables. Any money that we're expecting to get that we haven't gotten yet, receivables, and any things that we have used in 18 that we haven't paid for yet would take away from that. Because when your year-end financial statement is issued, it's on a modified accrual basis, which takes into account those factors. All of the reporting that we do monthly into councils on a cash basis, what actually has entered and left our accounts. We're working with our third-party CPA, Danelle Renninger. She's a one-person show. First week of March, March 4th and 5th, to prepare our books for the audit of the 2018 financial statements. And then our audit team from ALA intends to complete and issue the final audit report prior to June 30. We're going to request a sooner start date from them if we can get all our audit materials and requests filled by the first week of March. And we think we can hit that target, being that we've come a long way since last year. So that's the end of my financial spiel. I'll move on to a couple of projects that, two major ones that we've been working on. The codification project, which is the assembly of all past laws of the Borough Council and putting them into an intelligent, orderly document that can be read, accessed, served online, and understood. We just passed a major hurdle in that. Thank you, Matt West. He can talk more about it if you all want to hear more about where we're at right now. Sure.
My brain says yes, but your face says no.
Oh, it's mind-numbingly boring, but unbelievably important.
Well, then let's have it.
One of the challenges that we experienced when we first started here was knowing what laws were the most current, where they were, how to interpret it, because one of our core functions downstairs in the administrative office is interpretation of laws to enforce, and it was very difficult to navigate. So that was the genesis of this project, where we determined late 80s, early 90s was when our ordinances ceased to be codified. And to codified, it means put into the borough code. That is the book, the Bible of Narberth, all of the laws. And so it was very difficult to manage that, to see if it was a new law that superseded a law that was already on the code, and so on and so forth. So we contracted with General Code. They are the company that does, it's like some ridiculous percentage of all of the code of municipalities in the Northeast. They went through and looked at all of our existing code and all of the ordinances. We forwarded that to them, scanned every ordinance that wasn't codified, and they performed a legal and editorial review. And then they forwarded that to us, 60 pages worth of questions and answers that I needed to go through and say, yes, this is right, yes, this is right, no, yes, change to what you suggest. They also forwarded a 572-page manuscript, a completely redesigned, new look code. Chapters are going to be different numbers. It's reorganized. It's going to be easy to quickly get an answer of what's the most up-to-date legislation.
Awesome. Yeah.
And the system's going to be in place that any new ordinance that is adopted is automatically emailed to them, and they incorporate it right into the new code. And so this is like the lion's share of the work. I've been working on this since March. That's how big of a project it is, and I'm so happy to have it off of my desk. We have not submitted it to general code as of yet. There is one outstanding question that we're still working on trying to find an answer to. We have to go into a rat's nest of boxes to find answers sometimes, and it'll take some time. Then we're going to forward it to John Walco for his final review. He's already looked at this and has provided some feedback just before we send it off to general code. We're going to have him take a look at it, and then off it goes to general code, and then the big show. We get the code, we get all of the legislation in one action. Council will then take that action to incorporate all of these changes with one fell swoop, and we will have a brand new code.
Well, on behalf of the council, thank you. Having searched the code many times myself, it's nice to move ahead by about 8 years.
And it's going to shrink. Our code's going to shrink. There's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't. This just doesn't belong.
Well, yeah.
I've done that too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and this will have a very real effect on any amendments or revisions that we want to do going forward. It's so hard to figure out what's the
Yes.
newest version.
Right,
So,
yeah.
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 so thank you.
Yeah, it's great.
And
That's
thank-
awesome.
And thank you, council, for supporting that work. We couldn't have done it without the funding from the budget to make that happen. So there's roughly 17,000 in the 19 budget to complete this project and incorporate the zoning component into the code. So all of our graphics will be preserved, all of the tables and charts, and it'll look as good as it does as a standalone PDF.
It's money well spent. Hopefully that sets a precedent that will
There's a monthly
outlast all of
it's
us.
been-
Yeah,
Yes.
it's an annual fee of $1,000 to host the code.
It's
No.
worth,
That's what
yeah.
everybody-
Let's not tell them that it's worth more, but it is. That's awesome.
I have about 5 more minutes.
Sure,
Just
yeah.
to cover, I wanted to update members of the committee that there's been some enhancements to the employee benefit package that we will will translate into an action item of council at some point in the near future. We're adding 2 new benefits for full-time employees, a 457B deferred compensation retirement plan. It's eligible for government employees. It's entirely employee funded. It allows employees to deposit up to $18,500 per year in a tax-free fund. Any earnings on those investments accrue tax-free, and you pay taxes on the distributions.
That's a government version of a 401k. Yeah, like to a T, even the IRS limits, yeah. And then we're not doing any matching funds?
We have the option to, but at this point we are not.
Okay.
But
So it's
if-
just, so this is minimal cost to the borough?
It's at no cost.
Zero. Okay.
So the borough has the option to match, but that doesn't change the overall total amount that can be put in per.
Not at all. It's, we could theoretically, if we wanted to, we could match 1% to their 5 or what, there's a whole matter of schemes. But that's a good benefit.
Yeah, and the other benefit similarly is entirely employee funded with no overhead. It's a flexible spending account for dependent care expenses. Same idea, it allows employees to defer compensation to this account. They'll have to be very good at predicting how much they're going to need out of that account, because it's a use it or lose it per year scenario, but it allows someone to pay for childcare, out-of-home childcare, or any kind of childcare services with tax-free dollars, which is a big...
Up to $5,000 a year if you're married joint, yeah.
So expect some action there. I have 4 more quick items to update you on. The 2 on Sabine Avenue, the property manager, is still marketing a vacant space there, around 6,000 square feet. If we don't find a tenant in the next couple months, we've started to explore options of subdividing the space, because that's been one of the recommendations of the property manager to find tenants, but TBD. Narberth Avenue Bridge, appraisals for portions of the 6 properties needed to be acquired by the borough to complete construction are underway. We'll have a dollar figure for that, and then we'll go into negotiations through our consultant at PennDOT to purchase those properties. Hopefully we won't have to invoke any other powers other than persuasion and money to acquire those properties. 201 Sabine Park, things are moving, and campus in total, things are moving. The Improvements to the park equipment, we have an estimate in-house. We have a completed Sabine Park plan. We're excited about executing that in the coming months. We have a preliminary parking lot design that Ed and I have been reviewing. We're going to effect a couple of minor changes to that before we start talking to the rec board about it and how it integrates with their Sabine Park plan. I think complements it very well. And we also want to talk to MELC at 201 Sabine because it affects how children get to and from the outdoor play area. I think it's an improvement. Concrete and sidewalks, the location of the ADA access is going to change. We're also looking at parking on that block of Sabine Avenue. And the big roof project, all of that are underway, and it's a overall investment of more than $500,000 in that property that the borough is undertaking. So we're going to see some improvements coming soon in the park, on the campus, the parking lot, and the sidewalks and the interior areas of that campus in 2019. The last thing is that we have a new parking enforcement system coming. We signed a contract with UPS of Fort Washington, not the package delivery service, to migrate our enforcement system to their platform. We're going to save about 10% per year on our system costs, and it's going to provide to us an out-of-box solution for migrating unpaid violations directly to the district justice, which is a capability we lack right now. So if you don't pay your parking ticket, it's going to go to the district justice and you'll have to pay a lot more. So we look forward to working with Narberth PD on implementing this tool. We also look forward to integrating recommendations of the parking study into this platform and practice because it's going to support the things we want to do with the residential parking permit system and all the changes that are coming along that. And that concludes my update.
But two thoughts on that. One was, I guess, scofflaws beware
Yes.
on parking. Two is just, I thank you for your work on the general fund. It's my understanding that in years past, not necessarily last year, but prior, that the borough used to take out a bridge loan from like late winter, early winter the following year till tax revenue coming in. The fact that you're managing to maybe not even to have to borrow interfund. Yeah. But that just shows that we're moving towards long-term fiscal responsibility and a more sustainable budget. And that's going to give future councils a lot more opportunity, even us as years go on. Like every year, we'll have so much more opportunity. So thank you for your stewardship of our money. So that takes us to informational items for discussion. Item number one, so it came to my attention over the years that, and I talked with Barbara Fortner, or I should say I corresponded with a previous member of council, that there may have been some guidelines at some point that council had approved with respect to rec board, but rec board, it appears, maybe doesn't have the clearest direction from council as to how it ought to function. And I was thinking that what we could do tonight is, I did hear back from members of rec board, including its chair, that they would be open to a process of trying to establish, I'll use the word charter, but whatever you want to call it, just guidelines for guidelines would be a better word, guidelines for how they might want to operate, not strict rules or anything, but a rubric. So what I was hoping that Sean could do for us is maybe present an idea on how staff could work with rec board and then approach council to establish a framework to give guidelines to rec board and also for how rec board can work in partnership with staff and not independent from. So what do you think, Sean?
No, I think that's a good idea to integrate the work that board and commission does. Ed Harmon's been participating in the meetings. I'd like to check in with Ed. I'd like to attend a couple of the meetings and have some dialogue with the rec board about what their needs are, what the borough's situation and reality is, and try and coordinate a way for the elected officials to communicate and coordinate their activities with that board. So I don't at this point have any.
Well, it's early.
concrete
Yeah, we're just starting
recommendations.
it.
Yeah.
So do you think that we could leave this on the agenda going forward and that you could, whether it be the next FNA meeting or 3 months from now, but just over the winter, attempt to reach out and meet with rec board and talk with staff, talk with Ed, and work with them, and then maybe report back and we can see what you come up with and maybe take something to the full council to a workshop setting and just see if we can improve rec board, staff, council relations and performance and make sure we're all rowing on the same boat.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Thank you. The next item that just recently landed in FNA was there's a draft volunteer firefighter tax credit. Sean, could you give us the background on that, please?
It's something that's been kicking around in various forms, and I confess I don't know how much all of council knows about.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
I didn't ask you to. I just did that unilaterally. What do you two think, of Rob and Michelle, of the process for rec board guidelines? My interest in moving quick, I didn't. Is that something
that sounds sensible, just to get us all on the same page.
Do you think Sean's plan is the right? I just want to make sure there's buy-in. I don't want to just dictate.
I know that 2 years ago, council passed a new sort of description of the rec board.
Barbara, yeah.
Right, so you've seen that. I think the annual charge of what council would like the rec board to focus on is maybe what's lacking.
Okay.
So it'd be very similar to the process you're doing with council in terms of like prioritizing work and setting, I think it would be pretty much the same process, but with the rec board rather than council, and what projects would be priority, what things could the rec board do that would be most beneficial to council and our work that we could, So that dovetails with what council's working on as well, so we're not off in different directions.
Oh, totally,
so I feel
yeah.
like because Sean's already doing that with council projects, it makes sense.
It flows. This seems like a good time.
Sort of, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
I think
Just, I didn't want to just do that without. Awesome.
totally agree.
So back down, I apologize. Back to the volunteer firefighter tax credit, Sean.
This is an idea that's been kicking around, I think, for about a half a year when subsequent to Lower Merion Township passing a property tax credit for persons that participate in the volunteer fire companies that service Lower Merion Township. And it's pretty self-explanatory. There's nuances that to it that we'll get into more details of. But it's basically saying if you qualify as a volunteer firefighter, we'll give you a 20% break on your, and that number could be different. Council has discretion to determine whatever number they want. We would give you a 20% break on your property tax. And you'd have to, of course, be a property owner in the borough for that to have any monetary value to you. A couple drafts have been sent to me, and I think that what we'll do is circulate those drafts amongst the committee members. Have you seen, let me ask Rob and Rochelle, have you seen any of these drafts?
I haven't either. I may have gotten an email like 2 days ago, but I haven't looked at it if I have it.
Okay, so we're kind of starting at home plate here on this. At least, maybe you've heard the idea, but you haven't seen any of the details.
That's where I'm at, yeah.
Well, roughly how it works is that there's a certifying authority, typically the fire chief, that says persons A, B, C, and D, and E, and F, and G, they all qualify for this credit because they serve this much in the fire department. They get a certificate from the fire chief and they present that to the tax collector after they've paid their taxes, and the tax collector refunds them a certain portion of the taxes that they paid in that year. It's basically how it works. So it gets the certification authority is in the hands of the fire department personnel to if standards in the ordinance are A, B, and C, the fire chief is going to read it and certify that those persons meet those standards. And if they do, they get a certificate. If they have a certificate, they can go to the tax collector and get a refund. So that's basically how it works. So we're looking at that. I don't have any major concerns I want to bring up at this point in time until maybe we build some fluency in what the how it works.
I'd like to learn more about it. I mean, I don't have an opinion because I don't know enough about it. And I would also like to, you know, obviously if this is something that we want to move forward, we need to kick around in a workshop setting.
Yeah.
I almost think I'd rather learn about it before we just put it on the workshop agenda. But I'm open to discussion. What do you think, Rob and Michelle? What next steps do you want to take?
I think maybe we could see a draft of what criteria the chief might use, or the chief in Lower Merion is using, for example.
Yeah, I'd like to see what Lower Merion does.
That would be helpful for this committee, I could imagine, and then we could
take it to a council a workshop after that. That's the plan.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, and once I know more, I'll know how I feel. Sounds nice, but I want to see the details.
Right.
It would be beneficial to know what the universe of the fire department is going to be. How many members will this affect? In order to get a really good picture as to how it's going to work downstairs administratively, you would need to know how many members this would apply to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've done some poking around a little bit with this. Lower Merion has a pretty extensive requirement for them, but they know all of their membership. They know how many people it would apply to. Without that piece of data, it's going to be difficult for us to recommend what that true bottom line will be.
So would you need data from the fire company?
Yes.
So maybe, and I'm just throwing this out there, what we could do is when we get some data and lean towards options, maybe we could try to come up with, what, for lack of a better word, a questionnaire, and say to the fire company, we're considering this. Could you help us learn how to implement it and provide this data so we can make a smarter decision?
Sounds good.
Awesome.
So a tentative schedule then would be to get it in your hands ASAP, talk about it in more detail on the 20th, workshop on the 6th of March, possible action on the 20th of March.
And when will we work in?
Assuming it passes all the...
Yeah, and when do you think we should, that sounds fine, so when do you want to work in a request to the fire company for more information?
Before the FNA meeting.
Okay.
Next time.
Does that schedule allow, the tentative schedule allow for that?
Mm-hmm.
Then what do you guys want to go with that schedule? I like it. It's fast, but it's not next meeting, so that's
Yeah.
modest. No? That helps too.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was looking at you guys, like, I don't know how long that's going to take to create.
You know, it only applies to full-time active members who own and reside in a primary residence in the borough.
Okay, so it's a smaller universe. It shouldn't be hard.
Yeah, we've both peeked under the hood of it, looked at the draft, and actually queried the current fire chief. It's like, hey, who would qualify in the current fire department for this, and calculated what the proposed rebate would be and put a dollar value on it. I got to look at the revised draft because I think some things have changed, but we'll straighten that all out.
Awesome. So that takes us to action items. Do you want to do the minutes and schedule of bills? And then I want to reverse the order a little bit in the interest of time for the rest of that agenda. We'll knock out 4 what I think are easier matters and get to some more meaty ones. And then we can let the clock go on that until 7:25. So when I looked at the schedule of bills, and I don't have any questions at present. I feel like I have a solid grasp of what I need to. Did you have anything that you wanted to run by the committee specifically? And do membership have any questions?
No, just for the schedule of bills, you might look at the general fund total, $517,000. We didn't spend $517,000 in 4 weeks, because that includes $300,000 of transfers from our savings account to our operating account. So really, we spent $217,000 in 4 weeks, which is actually a pretty light 4 weeks for the borough. It's just those 2 checks from our investment account to our operating account are showing up on the schedule of bills. We're kind of paying ourselves with that. if I may, just quickly, there are two pretty sizable bills from uniform suppliers for the police department. McDonald Uniform was all of the uniforms that we needed to outfit our police officer, and Red the Uniform Tailor was all that we needed to outfit, most of what we needed to outfit our chief of police. Those bills were lying around, so we actually paid for things in 19 that we bought in 18. So that's going to screw up our budget versus actual reporting for this year. And it's going to make it'll be reconciled on the financial statement in the correct year as a accrued liability, last year's general fund balance, but it's going to show up in this year's cash.
Can I ask one question, Sean,
Sure.
about the health insurance? There's some savings, aren't there, coming in terms of the HMO or?
Yeah, the HMO, we only had about half of, I'm going to say half, the number might be a little different, of our employees on a preferred provider plan. We've only managed to switch half of those employees because the other half of those employees are police officers.
Right.
And that labor negotiation is not settled yet. In fact, we're meeting tomorrow.
But for the rest of the borough employees, the 19 healthcare plan is an HMO that delivers cost savings. Is that what you're highlighting, Rob?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at the Independence Blue Cross bill, and so we would see some savings like by the end of 2019.
This bill reflects the premium. Blue Cross billing is a little bit of a pain in the you-know-what.
Mm-hmm.
They don't make the changes until 3 weeks after you make the changes.
Okay.
So actually, I just paid February's bill, and it is lower.
Okay, good.
But they're discounting what they should have charged us in this bill,
Okay.
in February's bill. So it screws up 2 months of billing.
Well, there are an HMO.
But all administrative, fire company, and public works staff persons, full-time staff persons are on the HMO plan.
Is it Keystone?
Yes,
That's a good HMO. That's quality care.
gold
Yeah.
preferred.
I mean, it's the difficulty of the administrative is modest, but I mean, the care itself is, and the access is pretty good.
Yeah.
So that you know, I would trust my family with that. Awesome. Anything else on the schedule of bills this month? Anything with the minutes? That we usually don't talk about the minutes, but it's on here. I don't have any questions. I think there's 60 of them in an hour. They're getting worse. I would like to skip around. We have 3 motions to approve requests for extensions of time. It's my understanding that these are all administrative, non-controversial. So could we quickly highlight that, and if membership is satisfied, extinguish them for the agenda?
Yeah, the least controversial is 100 Forest 203 Haverford. Those are just plan, and I noticed the resolution here has got the wrong number. But anyway, there were planned drafting changes that weren't made, and they just needed they just needed some more time to make the plan changes.
Oh.
So they had to grant us, yeah.
Okay.
So they have to grant us an extension of review, or we would have had to deny them for the simple fact that they didn't include like a zoning chart on their sketch plan. So they granted us an extension. We'll anticipate those action items in February. The 838-840 Montgomery Avenue is I wouldn't say controversial because it's a simple minor lot consolidation plan, taking 2 lots on Montgomery Avenue and making them one. And there is some disagreement amongst the zoning officer and engineer about how to interpret the application. The applicant has granted us 30 through the end of February to review that. The applicant's going to appear before the Planning Commission. They have all of the review letters. They will make any amendments they need to their plan in time for the February business meeting.
Any questions on the 3 extensions? Okay. And I hate to try and push for quickness, but we have 2 matters that I would like to talk about in greater detail. But my understanding is that Public Works wants to purchase a piece of equipment. It's some form of lawnmower, but we'll have that detail in a moment. And I believe that the bottom line is that the cost of the equipment will be offset in 2 years by services we will no longer have to purchase. With that said, is the last item, what is the equipment, what does it cost, and what are the savings?
Yeah, I'll invite Ed Harmon to address the particulars of the equipment and the cost savings, but the total amount being requested is just shy of $10,000, $9,861 for a new John Deere, a tow-behind aerator, and a tow-behind sprayer.
The basic purpose of the unit is a mower, but it does have other attachments and capabilities, which we've been subcontracting with to maintenance the baseball field and football fields. So this unit will give the public works staff the capability to do that work in-house and not bring in subcontractors. So,
And what's the cost of the subcontractors per year for that work?
We were billed $5,800 in 2018 for that work.
So in 2 years, if it's the same cost, this pays for itself.
yes,
It's also, we can do the work at the most favorable time.
correct. We won't be at the discretion of the
Right.
contractors. It'll be coordinated
Yeah.
with the athletic association, and we can do it actually more frequently.
Right, yeah.
So
So we get better maintenance,
Correct.
less money.
Would it just be used at Norwood Park, or could it be used at Sabine?
Sabine as well, yes.
Okay.
And how long, what's the approximate lifespan for a piece of equipment?
8 to 10 years.
Okay.
The current unit is 23 years old.
Which is probably why we're contracting for someone else to, yeah.
Right.
What do we think about that, committee?
Yeah, that seems to make sense to me. But then you'd have at least 8 years where you're not paying anything on the machine or subcontractor.
So it's 40 grand savings for 10.
And I think that makes a lot of sense.
So yeah, to me it's a slam dunk, but I'm trying to be
There are some
democratic.
things where clearly it doesn't make a lot of sense to buy the equipment. It makes more sense to subcontract it out. I think that Ed has made a good call here, especially because having that maintenance done on the right schedule has been a real
Correct.
problem.
Correct.
This gives us that capacity.
And that's why we're working with the athletic association to make sure that we're coordinating our maintenance program with their needs of the
Right.
fields.
Yeah, I think that would be a big benefit. Finances aside, it's also just.
The quality
process.
and the control. So I want to thank Ed and Sean and Matt for just, it's another efficiency cost savings. It's just, in the aggregate, all these little things are going to add up to better finances and superior quality service. And I know that's what this council, we all 7 of us want that. That's what we're trying to do. So thanks for helping the government provide better service at less cost.
It's going to make the staff's work safer, easier, and quicker. I think it's going to be a quicker job to mow the fields. So the savings will accrue every time that you run the machine.
Terrific. So that takes us to, we have some time to go into the last 2 issues. I guess let's start with that tonight council is set to vote on and this committee is set to introduce the conditional use and tentative sketch plan for 114 Forest Avenue. Do you want to kick that off, Sean?
I know matter will be brought up, and I believe it would be a good idea in the council meeting to allow the solicitor to address council on what the content of the conditional use agreement is that the council would be voting on. Also, I believe the motion, the solicitor would like to separate that into 2 motions, one for the conditional use approval. And
One for the sketch plan?
One for the sketch plan. We didn't make that change to the agenda, so I'm going to suggest that John do that. The
It's okay.
Yeah, the opinion and order that John has drafted has been reviewed by reviewed and agreed to by the applicant. It creates certain statements of fact that were presented in the hearing, and certain admissions that the applicant made that they would do as part of the conditional, part of the approval of the conditional use. I'll let John explain all of those items. They're enumerated on the final 2 pages. I believe that was circulated by email to members of council. And includes 10 conditions of approval on pages 11, 12, and 13. Matters that were discussed at the conditional use hearing that the applicant has agreed to, such things as location of trash and recycling, installation of bicycle racks, electrical vehicles charging stations, making all the buildings parking available to the residents of the building and not be rented to non-residents, certain setback stipulations all along Essex Avenue, and the neighboring property on Essex Avenue, excuse me. A consultancy with the Shade Tree Commission on the types of trees to be planted. Make any changes recommended by the Borough Fire Marshal for fire safety. And a rather complex condition having to do with the construction of certain elements that were to be planned to be located in the borough right-of-way of Essex Avenue. If you recall, there are steps and provisions for their removal should the borough require it, and that they would generally comply with all testimony exhibits that they presented at the hearings. In other words, they couldn't do a switcheroo and do something that they didn't present to us on that night. That's it in a nutshell.
Does the committee have any, or did you have anything else to add on that?
No, it's just sort of my summary of what.
I'm interested to see what membership thinks of what they think. You want to go first, Michelle? To you and Rob.
I mean, it's a little, we haven't done a conditional use. This is the first one we've done as a council. I don't know when the last time the borough had one was, but, so I don't know process-wise. I guess as a committee, it would be up to us to put this up for vote.
Yeah.
Correct? I mean, I personally don't think I'm not comfortable with voting on it in its current form without just, at a minimum, discussion. Some things are fine to discuss here, but probably makes sense with full council and specifically with the solicitor. I think some things are things that are matters we probably need to discuss in executive session because we are sitting in a judicial capacity and there are things that I think we need to. But I think we need to defer to Aaron on that and to John. But as a committee member, I certainly wouldn't be comfortable saying, yeah, let's put this on the table for vote right now, because I myself couldn't probably vote for it right now. So that's kind of where I stand.
Rob, do you have anything you want to comment on this?
I mean, as I read it, I think it's pretty accurate. I mean, it seems accurate reflection of what we all agreed to during the hearing. But
we didn't agree to anything.
or what the solicitor listed out loud. That's my recollection.
Yes.
That's what I meant. Yeah, but I would agree with Michelle. I don't really know the process here, and I would be most comfortable with the whole council.
I echo both of your comments, and I'm uneasy this project. I share a lot of what you said, Michelle. What you said resonated with me, and I am uncomfortable with this, and I plan on making that clear this evening. To something I haven't decided how yet. I guess I'll figure that out in the next 15 minutes. But I don't know what else to say about it here. because I think I agree with both of my colleagues that this is a matter for, no, jump in, yeah.
I mean, it's my hope that perhaps that we may be able to consult in an executive session form with.
Oh, I think we should.
And come out perhaps with the feeling that we might request a small extension of time to respond, so we have a little more time as council to address these concerns and they get their own one.
There's been a request for executive session. I know I agree with that request, and I hope to see it happen, and that'll be at the discretion of our president.
Right.
But I hope to address it there, and it's a sensitive matter because we have to be cautious as to what we say in a public forum. But I have an unease about the matter and the process, and then I hope to see something better come of it, and I share your reservations as to the vote. That's just...
So as a committee, we're saying, well, I mean, I guess as chair of the committee, you don't really have to bring this motion to the table. That's kind of, I mean,
Yeah.
the case. And no,
I
you don't
don't.
have a rebellion on your hands from the committee members in that determination, so.
Well, yeah, I guess if we want to get technical, it's not really, yeah, we don't have a big consensus of pro. It's awkward. I don't mind saying it to the people of Narberth. I feel incredibly awkward about this entire conditional use process, and I feel awkward about what I'm being asked to do. And I'm going to speak my piece tonight and be candid and vote my conscience and hope that I do the right thing by the community. And I appreciate your input, Michelle, and your input, Rob. And I hope that whatever we do tonight, that we do the right thing and we can be proud of it. And I'll be happy when the issue's put to bed, if it's put to bed the right way. I hope it is. But it's a stressful thing.
Yes.
It's a contentious issue. It's not, there's a lot of strong feelings about it. And our one thing that's awkward for me, since the matter's being discussed, is to have to decide small nuances of a large project when there is a perception in the community when we're actually approving or disapproving it. There's a disconnect there between some people's understanding and what we're actually able to do.
That's right.
And that causes me great frustration because it's like I'm looking at this folder and I can decide that we need to fold it a little bit, or I can decide to open it a couple inches, but I can't rip it in half. That's how I view what we're doing with this conditional use process. We're not supposed to be in a situation where we're voting the building up and down.
Can't.
And that, to me, that's a new one for me.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like John describes it, it's a quasi-judicial matter.
Yeah.
Which is very different from what council usually does, but that really isn't, you're comfortable enough with that, I've been in appellate court.
Oh, I just don't like it. You're right.
I mean, it's
yeah.
looking at and understanding that there are certain things under this code that are hard requirements that have to be met, and there are some other provisions that are a little softer and suggest that there are certain other less black and white standards that need to be considered. I mean, we have some discretion there, but beyond that, no, you don't have, there's no authority, there's no legal authority to say you can't do it. They're a property owner, and they have significant legal rights.
No, yeah.
That can't be taken away. So.
And you're right that I understand the quasi-judicial role. I guess my frustration with the process of conditional use is that then the council is charged with exercise, like it's a political body, and we're being forced into I'm only speaking for myself, but we're being forced into a legal/zoning box where we need to make a legal and a zoning decision. And I don't feel that I have all the tools that I need to make an intelligent zoning decision on. I've never been in a situation where I've been working with a developer and my goal was to try and extract as many concessions as is reasonable and possible in a conditional use scenario. I don't understand zoning well enough. I don't feel that, at least for myself, that I should be making these decisions. And I've made that clear. Whether we continue down this path for the short or long term, we'll see. But I'm uncomfortable with council playing this role for conditional use. I would rather a scenario where we can select those among us who are well-versed in zoning, that they know this, the way that I would want someone to know this if they were advocating for my interests. And I've done my best, and I'll continue to do my best. But for me, it's a very frustrating policy.
Well, I
Because,
think that to the extent that a lot of the standards that aren't clear-cut zoning standards, for the most part, the clear-cut zoning standards shouldn't be up for debate, right? It should be pretty, like, the zoning officers reviewed them. And,
They pass or they
then we
fail,
have a
yeah.
solicitor to advise. That should be pretty straightforward. The softer standards, is this congruent with our, why can't I think of the word? I'm trying to think of the word, our plan, our comprehensive plan.
Plan, yeah.
Right. Is this harmful or beneficial to the community? Those kinds of determinations I think they are actually,
you think they're political?
well, they're determinations that I think a body that's representative of the community should make. But it doesn't, from a process point of view, whether council's doing it or whether the zoning hearing board's doing it, there should probably be a lot of input from, say, the planning commission, which is
I agree with the
situated to do
input.
those things.
Yeah.
And make those determinations, a lot of advice, and we do. We have that. We have the county planners have given us their thoughts on it as well. So we're not going in blind. At the end of the day, somebody needs, if it's not a by right development, somebody needs to sort of make a call on, hey, in order to make this dovetail with the community's needs, these are some conditions that we think are reasonable to put on it. I think council can do that. I think the zoning hearing board can do that in many cases too. So I'm not uncomfortable with it, but completely.
We agree like 85%, yeah.
But in this case, I'm not sure we've necessarily taken the time to sit down as council and really talk about those things and talk those through yet. So that's my feeling.
We met for 30 minutes after a multi-hour hearing.
Yeah,
Here we are.
I think that I'd like to have more time to do that.
I guess for myself, I just don't feel, it's just a philosophy. I don't feel it's a decision the council should be making. It's a reasonable opinion to disagree on. I just don't feel that these are decisions the council should make. I think this belongs in front of a zoning hearing board, because we get political pressure from our constituents to act a certain way and to make a political, a lot of people don't want this. And we're not supposed to vote against it if it meets criteria, which I'm not saying it does meet criteria, but that doesn't mean we can't. You're playing games in that you're introducing a legal element into a political body, and if they choose to be political, you could get a bad outcome.
Right.
And I just don't think I think it's a risky proposition that inevitably, if it goes on long enough, will produce a bad outcome.
I agree that conditional use should be limited, for all the reasons you just said, and more reasons.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. It's
But
maybe,
that
well, we
just
have.
segues right into the next.
Yeah,
And we have
Last item.
we have a few minutes, and then I want to cut it short. But Sean, what's our last issue? Is a motion to advertise a zoning amendment, ordinance 1014, or it's really ill-defined at this point. But I guess for tonight, we just want to get into the changes with respect to. We have 3 minutes. There's changes with respect to conditional use as opposed to special exception. What do you think?
About, I think.
We have 3 minutes to.
Okay.
Should we just cover the fact that the only change tonight is really with respect to whether we stick with conditional use or potentially advertise an ordinance to switch to special exception. Is that accurate?
Yeah, council.
Any comments? Sean, you want to jump in
Yeah,
here?
council approved for advertisement a different version of ordinance 1014 in its December meeting, but we weren't going to be able to act on any ordinance until February, giving us an opportunity to amend any ordinance that was introduced in December at the January meeting. So I think that's where we're at now. And I'd like it, if you don't mind, if John could speak to, since he was the one who worked on it, what the discrete changes are. I know generally what the changes are, and I'm worried I might leave some details out. But
Sure.
I'm trying to swim in that pool.
That's fine.
There's one
I actually think that's.
question I have for you, and I don't know if this is the time to do it or later. Do you have, at present, a sense of what the pipeline is for potential, conditional use applications? Is that something you can share? What what
Yeah,
you
sure.
thought?
That's a fair question. I can't share. Yeah,
Based on what you know.
I think it would be improper to share like with any great specificity.
In executive session, could you provide more?
Sure, yeah. Who
We're
will
going to have,
where.
hopefully we'll have an executive
But
session. Sorry.
myself and the zoning officer offer as a service to any property owner in the borough conversations about what you can do on your property. And at most at this time, we've had 2 conversations, one of them with the owner of 198 Elmwood, which we all know, that was an ordinance that's already been approved for that amended civic institutional reuse. You're familiar with that one. That could, and I don't know if that's coming forward or not, or what's happening there. It's sort of in purgatory.
Like many
No pun
things.
intended. And the other one would be a apartment building, medium to small sized apartment building in the 4A zoning district. A property owner wants to demolish and build an apartment building, and under the current code, I believe they would have to go through conditional use to do that. And they haven't stated if that's
Nothing else
a
that you know
preference
that's
or.
imminent, probably.
No, nothing I've been
I mean,
I've been
anything could pop
approached
out,
with.
but nobody talked to you about it.
Sure.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other comments or questions or anything from the committee or staff? Hearing none. Finance Administration is adjourned.